Nice to meet you, Ozzy. I'm Nate McDonald. I'm the lead producer for UFC 5.
I'm Raman Baski. I am the associate producer on UFC 5.
And I am Jazz Brusso, associate producer on UFC 5.
All right, gentlemen, great to see you. I want to start by noting that I'm used to EA Sports franchises getting annual releases, but it's been a while since we've seen EA on a UFC title. What are the primary reasons for these less frequent releases than some of your EA Sports counterparts?
Specifically for this one between UFC 4 and UFC 5, the biggest reason was with a new engine in Frostbite, right? The elevation to that new generational hardware, it takes time, right? Plus, for UFC 4, the community was really strong and vibrant with 20 plus million players. So we balanced fostering that community consistently growing while also readying for the next phase of the franchise so that we were ensuring that there was a very definitive title over title leap forward.
Talking about the Frostbite engine, what possibilities has that opened up to you that you weren't quite able to achieve with the Ignite engine?
It's endless. I could go on for the entire 15 minutes, so I'll try to condense it into a couple for you. Honestly, it's brought unrivaled graphic updates for this game. Everything from the dynamic lighting and the overhauled character fidelity to the realistic strand-based hair that's going to be in real-time gameplay for the first time in any of our EA Sports products. Any of the clothing animations improving our atmospherics. The Frostbite engine's really helping bring the action in the Octagon to life. Then if we think about what we're able to do with our, the new fluid physics and particle systems that's making blood and sweat drip and spray as it does, as you would expect to see it do in real life, is pretty significant as well. And yeah, overall, just the photorealistic fighter likenesses that we've been able to accentuate through what Frostbite's been able to give us is pretty significant. And I think that when you take that and you look into how we've added the meta gameplay around the real impact system to be able to take what you're seeing that Frostbite's been able to give us and now add an added gameplay element to the franchise that hasn't been there before is fairly significant. I could talk about it for half an hour, but I'm trying to give you time for other questions.
So explain the real impact system. How does your fighter affected over time by stacked up damage? Can the setting be tweaked at all? And also, how do you walk that visceral line and determine what's acceptable to depict in game and which of the more horrific injuries in fighting shouldn't be highlighted so much, especially if the goal is to present a realistic product to audiences?
So our goal is to be very realistic, right? So when you take a huge shot or accumulation of strikes to a region of the face, it's going to cause cuts or swelling, just like it would in real life. But there's certain strikes that have properties more than others. An elbow in close range has more of an ability to cut you open than a jab from far range, right? So this type of damage, if you have a cut on their side of the face, it'll lead to a vision penalty. If you have a broken nose, it's going to lead to a breathing penalty. And what that actually means in terms of our gameplay meta itself is a broken nose will lead to your stamina attribute getting decreased, or a vision penalty because you have a cut on your eye will lead to your block actually coming up a lot slower. Just like a fighter in real life who would have blood running through their eyes, it's harder for them to see rounded strikes come in from the side of their face. So hooks, roundhouses, it's going to be a lot harder to block those if you have a vision impairment. So more strikes to the same region will aggravate those cuts or that swelling, and it can lead to a doctor stoppage if it gets bad enough. But there's also like cut resistance attributes that we've added this year as well. So you're going to see very specific fighters be open to cuts a lot more, like a Nick Diaz would, right? Or there would be fighters like an Anderson Silva who would have a high cut resistance who wouldn't get cut as open. So like much like our damage system, it's really as real as it gets. So there's literally no luck involved in our doctor stoppage or our damage system. It's all about getting hit.
Can the setting be tweaked at all? And how do you determine what should be depicted in game and which are the more horrific injuries maybe shouldn't be highlighted so much, like the cauliflower ears and that sort of thing?
So yes, we do have sliders across the game that can tune the damage. So we call them game styles. So game styles do is essentially give you an option to apply any set of sliders to any mode across our game. So there's going to be a stand and bang game style There'll be a competitive game style, which is what our ranked championship for most competitive online modes are set to. And then there's simulation game styles, which is that's real-time clock, a lot harder damage, a lot harder stamina. And those can be played anywhere across the game. So if you want to play career mode with stand and bang rules, you can. And you can climb the ranks of the UFC just with stand and bang rules alone. So that's going to change the way people play across the game and the way damage will impact you, of course.
As far as that's concerned, we really were drawing the line on, like, we want to be as authentic to the sport as we can. And although there are, every so often, there can be a gruesome injury, they're so few and far between that we didn't want the game to over-index on that piece of it. We want to over-index on what is real. Going back to the as real as it gets sort of core pillar, let's focus on the frequency of the type of damage and how far you would see it pushed in a 5-round fight. You know, some of the bangers that are in the UFC, something you would expect to see from a Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier fight, right? Like, let's focus on that level of damage and not index into gruesome, because the sport itself is a very visceral sport, and we just wanted to be able to create that experience as authentically as we possibly could.
Yeah, those Anderson Silva type injuries aren't exactly common. The moments where you go for a common calf kick and it just snaps in half, like, it doesn't always happen. So on that note, this is the first game in the series to receive an M rating, and was it a goal to kind of go in shooting for an M rating just because it kind of opens up more possibilities for you and kind of opens a door for a more realistic presentation?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it started as like a direct goal. I think the goal was around what I mentioned earlier about being as real as it gets and being authentic to the MMA and being able to deliver it in an unedited, authentic way as possible, right? And so organically, what came out of that is M for mature. It wasn't that M for mature is the goal, how are we going to get there? It's the goal for what we want to deliver in UFC 5 are these core pillars, and M for mature ended up becoming a byproduct of that.
And you're changing submissions in a big way. Can you explain the new submission system and why you ultimately decided to do away with the HUD-based minigames? And also, how do you balance crafting that submission system that appeals to the hardcore fighting fan and the average player?
So the all-new UFC 5 seamless submission feature, it's basically a revamped extension of the existing grappling game system that we've had for the past 3 iterations of UFC. So essentially, we're making it a lot easier to onboard users into submissions this year. There's no mini game that you have to learn or have to tune, or you would have to figure out how to, get the best out of the mini game. Essentially, just keep using transition. You're going to transition your way all the way through the end of a submission. So essentially, it's at the very base of what our submission game is with seamless submissions. It's transition. That's it. So you're going to move left, you're going to move right, you're going to move up, you're going to move down in order to finish your submission. But your opponent's going to be doing the exact same thing at the same time. Just like how in UFC 4, you would move from half guard to full mount. Essentially, once you get to full mount, you'll now have a transition for an armbar. And then that transition will go to the second level of an armbar, and then another transition to finish the armbar. But the defender is going to be able to transition all throughout that as well. So it's basically just 2 players moving on top of one another, and it just makes our submission game a lot faster, a lot more intense, a lot quicker, a lot more outcomes. You can bail on submissions this year, which is another fan requested thing for a long time, which is, hey, I'm deep in an armbar, but I know I'm not going to finish it. Can I let it go and get to a good position? Yes, you can do that this year.
Yeah, so moving to career mode, what elements did you want to add to career mode, and what ideas like Coach Davis and that sort of thing, what did you want to retain for this iteration?
Well, in UFC 5, like, the players are going to experience an all-new introduction into career mode. So Valentina Shevchenko is going to welcome the player, and we're bringing back Coach Davis to guide the players through their UFC career. And there's going to be new cinematics, there's new locations, and there's a refined focus on onboarding. But we've also upgraded the training camp. So training camps are upgraded. We're going to let players simulate their training camp. And these sparring drills that we've added, there's going to be packs of sparring challenges, and you can get a grade for them as well. So once you've gotten a grade, you can always simulate back to that grade when that challenge pack reappears. You can get the fighter evolution, the hype, or the fitness that you would have got, but just by simulating. So we're allowing you to get through training camp a lot faster this year. But we've also added a lot more things, right? There's the backyard venue that's going to open up career mode. There's the contender series in the Apex Arena. There's the Performance Institute this year. There's the Etihad Arena this year. All new social media challenges this year from fans. So fans will ask you, hey, can you do this thing in a fight? And you can accept it or you can decline it. And depending if you pass that challenge, you'll get more hype or more fans going into your next fight. There's also a bunch of new sponsorships. There's Prime Hydration, there's ESPN Plus, Venom, Toyo Tires will ask you to sponsor. And then there's the game styles. Again, game styles will have a big impact on career mode because you can essentially play career mode any which way you want, with the tuning you want as well. So those are big pieces of career mode this year.
And how does online career work? How can players develop their fighters differently there compared to their offline career?
Being created characters only, online career will really create maximum visibility to how players express themselves through customization. As you mentioned, we are introducing elements of career mode into online career, mainly through our fighter evolution system. So players will earn fighter evolution points following their fights. They can use those points to grow their fighter, much like they do in career mode. So, growing your attributes, your stats, your perks, and using that fighter to compete in the different divisions. So there's 3 men's divisions, 1 women's division, and following all of that, once you reach the level cap for your fighter, you can prestige them, increasing the level cap and allowing you to grow your fighter in more ways.
UFC 5 is a current gen console exclusive. It's coming to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. We're leaving the past generation behind, but I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize that Shacknews has its roots in PC gaming. So what has to happen to bring UFC games to fight fans on PC?
It's something that we talk about. It's always on the radar for us. The main focus for this team, in order to be able to deliver the title over title differentiation and be able to make sure that with the Frostbite transition that we were delivering a high quality product to our players when it launches, we had to remain very focused on just delivering on the current gen consoles. But PC is something that's always up for discussion, just nothing concrete in that regard.